All right, I'll be there in a little bit. You're welcome. Bye.
All right, guys. Everything should be live. Everybody, feel free, somebody, to go and say whether the audio is coming across fine or whatever. We ended up with a major 50-mile-an-hour wind gust type storm coming through, and so if the internet is wonky or whatever, we'll refire the chat. But it should be good. Hopefully you guys can see everything. All right. Cool. Audio is coming across. Thanks, guys. I appreciate that. Let's see. All right. So anyways, as far as everybody is concerned, I'm doing just fine. Jesse's doing just fine. I'm wearing the tinfoil hat because all the conspiracy theories as to why it is I stopped doing live chats for the last month and a half. So there is no conspiracy theory. I just plain had way too much going on. I was helping a friend of mine work on his stuff. I was working on a big giant 28 cubic yard dump truck.
He was slacking. Don't let him lie to you. He's slacking. Love you.
Love you.
Bye, y'all.
I was doing the PTO on a dump truck. I was helping with rebuilding the pump on the dump truck. I was helping with moving a house and room. I was working on cleaning up my own yard. I was digging machines out of areas of my land that I haven't been able to go and get the machines out of in almost 3 years. The next time I post a subscriber update, things have massively changed around the property and stuff. So just so you guys know, I'm fine. All the conspiracy theorists are wrong. I did not get arrested. I did not end up losing my house. I seriously, I've had every email possible you could imagine, and people kicking in that supposedly there's some big conspiracy. I'm all set. I'm here, guys. Let's see. Let's see. Lauren says, about to take a bicycle front end and the rear of a tractor for a trike truck. You know, I've debated that numerous times. I've debated the idea of making some sort of trike-ish type idea. What I was always going to go and do if I could was get a hold of a rear engine rider, but one of the ones that had a 7-speed that you could be able to go and have the shifter that comes out either to the side or in the front. I think it's the Toro 38, if I remember right. It's got a 5-speed Peerless 700 in it, or a Peerless 500. I can't remember which one, but that was what I was always debating. The problem that I see guys run into when they're dealing with the trike builds is that they convert the trike to a live axle, they lose the differential, and then that ends up causing the whole thing to end up just end up like the 3-wheeled ATVs there from the 90s that used to flip over forward and smash people and break shoulders. That's my thing about doing the trike, is that if I was going to do a trike, I would keep it so it had a differential somehow. Just because the shorter that wheelbase gets, anybody who's ever driven a lockered rear end mud mower is, yeah. All right, let's see. Should be good reception with that hat. Yeah, it's amazing. It's amazing. I seriously ended up with all kinds of interesting emails and questions and stuff like that. It was crazy. Let's see. Area 37. Is there a difference between 37 and Area 51? Am I missing something? Tell us the truth. The aliens got you. Yeah, no, the aliens didn't get me. Although I did have the chance to go and drive an actual 28 cubic yard dump truck in order to unload salt and stuff. I decided to pass on that idea. I got no interest in doing salt transports. Let's see. 21 horsepower engine would be fine on my trike. Not with a bicycle front end, it's not going to be. That's a horrible, deadly idea. But hey, you do whatever you want, man. Make sure you post that build up. I want to go and see some pictures of that. Oh, Hunter says it's a Toro 832 that I'm thinking of, or 1132. That's what I thought. I thought I remembered an 8 horsepower being on those Toros. Any thoughts on using a John Deere 314 with on-console shifter as a drag race mower? So the one thing that the drag race guys have really made very clear to me is that a race can really, really, really be won and lost on this shift. If you have a bunch of sloppy linkages, if you have a bunch of oddball linkages, if there's any question on that shift, that is a big, giant difference in your time. And the drag racing guys have made it very, very clear that the shorter the shift, the quicker the shift, all of that kind of stuff is a big deal in the drag racing. That's the reason why it is a lot of them prefer the side shift Craftsmans or the pull-in pros or the side shift wizards, because on those side shift machines, it is literally just a shift knob to a straight rod to a drop down, and the only linkage difference in slop area is about a 4-inch piece that goes back to your transmission. And that's the same exact thing that I run in the Mud Wizard. And the reason why it is I like that and why I've started adopting that, why I adopted that, was because of the fact that there was just very little shift slop that you could have in there. The more linkages that you have, the more extra stuff that you have, the more slop there is in the system, and the worst case scenario is more likely to happen. And the worst case scenario is you have that thing just spun right up and you manage to slop the shift and it ends up between two gears, and either A, you dump into the wrong gear, B, you dump into the gear that you want, but you spin off and you snap your shifting key. Or worse yet, you end up with both gears and you explode something. I have a very firm feeling that that is part of the reason why it is I've been watching some of the drag race guys explode fourth gear, is I think that there's some sort of shift linkage issue going on where they're partially ending up between gears, because I've seen it happen in mud mowers. I've seen it happen where the shift linkage wears down and they end up in between third and fourth gear and they exploded in the mud holes. So do your best. If that system has a lot of slop in it, do your best to remove as much slop as possible. Like I said, there are a lot of races in the drag race in the tractors that are won and lost in the guys shifting. On a side note, for you guys who are not like YouTube junkies, you can go on to a YouTube video, like say drag racing, like say you go to my drag racing videos. You can go on to YouTube settings in that video and you can slow the frame rate on that. And so you can sit there and you can watch the guy's front tires as he comes up and when they drop and when he shifts. You can watch to go and see exactly how long that shift takes and the number of frames and stuff. That's one of the features that's on YouTube now, and I used it a lot in order to be able to do research while I was doing this, plus my own footage. Being able to take that video, put it into Power Director, and being able to slow that frame rate down so that I could be able to frame by frame scrutinize exactly how the shifts were done, exactly when the shifts were done, and stuff like that. If you watch the top racers in the big mod class, especially the guy that's in the video of me, the guy that's in the video against me, if you watch him in the latest drag racing video, you can slow it down and you can see that as Brian is hitting his clutch, you can see as he hits his clutch, he is already in transit to do his shift. His clutch is actually a third of the way down as he's hitting his shift knob. As he's down about halfway on the clutch, he's already proceeding through the shift, and he's lifting the clutch as he's hitting into the gear. He's got it down to a perfect science. If you watch the gray Craftsman that races in small mod, the guy's name is Dan. And if you watch Dan specifically, you'll see that he drops for his clutch shift. And yet again, he is in progress into the shift as he's hitting that clutch about halfway down. And that's where it's a whole bunch of win or loss as far as these events are concerned. So that's what you want to practice. You want to practice that clutch. You want to practice that shift. The bug with the 5-speed conversion, before I started doing the custom 3-speed transmission, I practiced and I did that shift, and I would go up and down my driveway practicing the launch into the shift, not a full pull, but just the launch, the end of third or fourth gear or whatever I launched in, and I would wait to feel the nose on the machine level and then slam the shift as fast as I could, and learning to shift as you're clutching. Clutch shifting is without a doubt the way you win on the drag racing. Oh, the smiley face? Yeah, that smiley face has been there for years and years and years. All right, be using a high-low. Oh, for the trike build, Lauren's going to use a high-low MTD FNR. That's a good idea. That'll give you the open differential, which will allow you to still have the turn radius and stuff, and that'll definitely make a difference. Let's see. Let's see. Do I like bowling? I do occasionally. I'm not really good at bowling. I think my usual average score is about 130 to 140. I'm not really that good at bowling. I don't know whether that score is even halfway decent. I think it's like 180 you're supposed to be into to be decent at bowling. But yeah, bowling is what it is. Correction, the aliens don't get you. You are the alien. Well, yeah, definitely. I'm a big fan of Men in Black, actually. Men in Black 1 and Men in Black 2, I really like those movies. I like the whole postal store beatboxing thing. I love that. I love the idea of the aliens being among us and all that kind of stuff. I think that's great. Mr. Rallyman, the 5-speed looks to be fast now. Oh, it's no longer a 5-speed, actually. It is an MST. It is an MST 206 that only has first gear, fourth gear, and sixth gear in it. It had first gear, fourth gear, and sixth gear in it, except for I blew first gear out while I was test driving it, but it still will shift into fourth and sixth gear. So I removed all the extra gears out so that it only has those ones to shift into, and put spacers out of a Peerless 203 from a snowblower. Industrial snowblowers, some of them have Peerless 203s in them, and they actually have shift blockers that are built into them. So you can swap one of those into an MST 204, 205, and 206 in order to create custom transmissions in order to only have certain gears that you want to work with. So that's what I did with my racer. So now my racer has just 2 gears in it. So I launch in 4th and I shift it into 6th. And well, let's just say it'll top out at way past 30 now. I won't be the fastest guy there, but I sure as heck will not be the slowest either, as long as everything holds together. I know that the slower guys that are showing up are in about 28 miles per hour, which is why it is I knew I had to break 30. And I have broken 30 without a question. The question is, yet again, it's won and lost in the shifts. I don't have the experience. We're going to see whether we can catch the shifts correctly in order to at least end up in the middle of the field. And I'm not going to release any information on my small mod machine because I have a secret build. Wahahaha. I have a secret build I have done, and that one will clear 30 also. It is a small mod machine, and it is nothing like anything that they have built there. I'm running a transmission that none of them are running, and it is not an FNR. It is a shift. It is a standard shift machine, but it is not a transmission any of them are running. It is, however, an MTD. It is a MTD chassis with a MTD setup that was a factory setup. I didn't even change the MTD clutch out of it. It is running an MTD clutch with a couple of idlers added in order to go and in order to help with the clutch tension, but it's running the stock clutch and it's running the stock MTD chassis and everything, even the stock transmission. So we've got something secret coming out. You guys are going to have to wait to go and see it till after the drag race, though, because I got to see if it holds together. I've literally only I am very worried about blowing it up, so I have literally only driven it down my driveway 4 times. But I know it clears 30 miles per hour, so we're going to see what it'll do. Let's see. You are the Ratatouille of skulls with the fire shirt. Oh, the skull? Yeah. It's a cook shirt from a camp. Actually, when I ended up building the cabin and I was homeless and everything else, I ended up with the chance to go and help with cleaning out storage units. And so as part of me cleaning out the storage units, I ended up getting to go and keep a share of what we pulled out of the units. So I ended up with a bunch of free stuff to be able to set up the cabin, to be able to go and have things to go and use. And this was one of the shirts, and I really like it. And it's a cook shirt from a camp. So I like it. I think it's cool. So I like to wear it and all that kind of fun stuff. Let's see. I just got a John Deere 317 with a Kohler KT17 opposed twin. Is taken apart, but 95% there. Should I bother to figure out the engine and get it running, or buy the 18 horsepower Commander V-twin for 300 locally? See, that's a hard one. The problem is there is you don't know the previous stuff to know with the engine. So it's one thing if you have a junkyard and you can pull enough parts to be able to test run it, versus not. Now, the one thing I'll tell you is that if you do not have a carburetor, but you have at least your coils and you can test fire the coils, then that means that you can at least be able to gasket plate the intake and use starter fluid to see if it'll fire and at least cycle. And that is one of the things that I always do if somebody has ripped the carburetor off. So what I mean by being able to gasket plate it is that I don't have a piece of hose here to be able to go and use. But, oh, let's see. I need something for making, there we go. Okay. So let's say for the sake of argument that this candle is your intake. So some dummy decided to rip the carb off. It didn't come with the carb, whatever. And you have this as your intake, okay? If you take a piece of really thick cardboard, you take a really nice thick piece of cardboard and you cut it out so that it fits over where the studs are for the carb or whatever, and then you drill a hole in it, a small hole. I'm not talking a big hole, I'm talking a very small hole, maybe a 1/4 inch at the very biggest. Okay? You spray some carburetor cleaner in there, you stick your cardboard plate with the hole over the top of it, and then that way you can try to get it to act like a choke plate and pre-fire that motor to be able to see whether it's going to cycle and whether it sounds decent when you cycle it. I've done that a lot on machines where people end up losing the carburetor. They can't figure out what they did with it or whatever. Is you make a template over the end of it, you drill a 1/4 inch hole through it, and then if it doesn't quite fire or it seems to backfire a little bit, drill that hole out a little bit bigger. And a lot of times you can choke plate it in order to be able to test fire it. Just one of those junkyard dog type things in order to be able to do. I actually learned how to go and be able to do that with testing V8 engines in a junkyard. They would take a carb plate and then they would tape with really good duct tape across over the top of it in order to choke plate it and then start it with starter fluid in order to test it in the junkyard. Because a lot of times people would pull the carburetor in order to go and work on their vehicle. Who's Brian and who's Dan? If you're watching the videos, Brian is the guy who runs against me in the MTD video who utterly, totally kicks my butt. He's the top racer in Big Mod. The red machine in the videos against me, that would be Brian. He's the top racer. As far as small mod goes, the top racer's guy's name is Dan. He races a gray Craftsman. That gray Craftsman is literally the same exact chassis as Mud Wizard. You guys should take a look at his machine and watch how he races. He goes really good. Yes, it's coffee. Let's see. See, the MTD high-low has only 2 gears and 10-inch rims. It's funny, Lauren, that you're talking about one of those because I'm actually hoping to get a hold of one of those pretty soon in order to be able to go and play with. I've got a couple of ideas for one for myself, actually. So I'd love to go and see some pictures of your setup when you get a chance. Post them up, tag me in it, if you would, please. I'd love to go and see how you end up setting that up. Jerk of all trades in the house. Hey, bud. I hope you're doing good. I hope you're getting in some wood in order to be warm this winter. And, man, I actually ended up with a whole ton of furniture out of a storage unit that's old actual wood furniture that's too far gone to be worth restoring. I'm going to end up chopping it all up and smashing it in order to be able to burn in my wood stove. I've also got a slightly different wood stove to be able to put in, and eventually I need to go and split that into its own chimney someday. But, you know, it is what it is. I will survive. Let's see. Skulls, 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 and more skulls is right. Let's see. Yes, I do need one of those 2-speed FNRs. They're getting really hard to find. I've been looking around for one. I happen to go and end up having somebody get a hold of me that follows the channel that has one he doesn't plan to use. So I'm really glad that, you know, somebody was looking out for me. He follows the racer build, and he wanted to go and see if I was interested to use it to build a dragster. And I don't know. I don't know if it'll be able to hold up to go and build a dragster. You know, that's part of the reason why it is that I do what I do, is I'm willing to go and explode things just so that we can go and see at what level we actually end up blowing the snot out of something. Oh, let me see here. All right. Well, let's see. But anyways, yeah, so I've been working on a ton of stuff. We've been doing a ton of cleanup around the house. We finally have started getting into the house and being able to do some cleanup and things like that. The problem is with this stupid cornhole thing, a lot of the recycling places have gotten very strict on what they're taking and stuff like that. And the Goodwill that's in town has really cut back on what they're willing to take, what they're willing to deal with, and stuff like that, because the process that they have to go through in order to be able to retail stuff has changed because of cornhole. And so they're only taking certain items and certain things that are easy for them to process. So it's just been a really long ordeal because I haven't been able to get rid of anything, at least as far as like the recycling is concerned. I really would rather not, you know, I'm going to end up with probably 20 plus bags of trash if I don't recycle. And I'd rather not be paying. I don't know what you guys pay, but a 30-gallon trash bag in the town of Belfast, Maine is utterly stupid that it is priced at $3.50 a bag. If you do not recycle stuff, you have to pay $3.50 a bag for trash. And if I had to go and throw away 20 bags worth of trash, that adds up. That adds up to quite a bit. And that's plus the gas to go and transport and everything else. So if I can't manage to recycle or I can't manage to Goodwill it, I've got to pay that for everything. And, you know, yes, I'm making money here on YouTube, but trust me, it is nowhere near as good as it was last year. At this time last year, I was making, I'm technically not allowed to tell you what I make, but I will tell you straight to your face, I made $1,000 more a year ago than I am right now. Without question. I was making $1,000 a month more a year ago than I am right now. And I'm not allowed to tell you exactly what I make, but that's a pretty good perspective right there. So that's the reason why it is the builds have all been junkyard. Oh, the mystery build tractor that I built for drag racing, I have a grand total, it does 30 plus miles per hour, and I have a grand total of $46 into it. It cost me $46 to build it. That's including belts and the idlers. Everything else on it is junkyard. The machine I got for free. The pulleys are junkyard pulleys. The transmission pulley and everything is a junkyard pulley. I welded up myself. The only thing that I had to pay for in the entire build is, that's a question for you guys. The way that I custom weld pulleys and how I custom weld pulleys in order to make drive pulleys and make transmission pulleys. Do you guys have any interest in me doing a how-to video on that? Is there any interest at all in the idea that I should do a video on that? Like the way that I plasma cut them out and stuff. I hand plasma. I don't do any special drilling holes, whatever stupid stuff. Like I've, you know, you guys know this. Nothing irritates me more than when I see a video where somebody uses, you know, specialty drill bits or some $2,000 lathe in order to cut it out or something like that. Like, would you guys like to go and see the way that I make those by hand? I don't think it's that interesting, but if it is to you guys, or you think it would be worth, you know, search hit information for you guys, you know, let me know. I'll gladly do a video on that later on. I've got some custom pulleys that I need to make for another project. You know. Oh, and I've got another debate that I've got going on that I'll open up to you guys about. So, obviously, the easiest chassis that you could be able to go and put the 10 horsepower diesel that I got up and running, obviously, without question, the two easiest chassis to be able to put that into are going to be a Sears Suburban, a wheel horse, and the third choice, with a little bit more work, would be a GT6000 with a 633 roper in it. So obviously all three of those have been done. All of them have been done, and they have been utterly beat to snot on how to do it. I mean, people were swapping 10 horsepower diesels into Sears Suburbans over 2.5 years before, yeah, we all know so-and-so did it. And then as far as the wheel horse thing is concerned, the wheel horse is literally the same exact tractor as the Sears Suburban, which means that that's no big deal. Anybody can do that. And then the GT6000, there's been, I think it's at least 4 YouTubers at this point have documented how to do it. About 2 years or so ago, a guy did it for the ATLTF tractor competition, and he did a full write-up on it. And he's got a very, very awesome write-up on how to go and do it for a GT6000, which means it's been done. It's obvious that it works, and it's simplistic in order to be able to do. So I really don't want to clone that. And as much as I could put my own spin on the idea, I'd really kind of rather do something different. So if you had a tractor that you could put it in that just shouldn't have it in it, even if it originally had a vertical shaft motor, would you do it? Like would you go through and do that? Would you try and figure out how to put it into a machine that originally had a vertical shaft, and would that be relevant to you guys? And holy cow, I don't know what was happening with my chat, but apparently my chat got stuck, and all of a sudden it's blowing up right now. So you guys need to go and give me a sec in order to scroll back up through this, and let me see if I can catch up with you guys. Wow, holy cow. Yeah, I was wondering what was going on, because you guys usually are way more, you're way more talkative in the chat than what was going on. So I am sorry if people ended up I'm sorry if people ended up not, catching that. Old Roscoe, have you ever reconditioned old batteries? So I have done battery reconditioning, and I do have about a 1 in 5 success rate with it. And I'll tell you how I recondition batteries, and I'll tell you the reasoning as to how I do it, okay? If you have a battery that you pull out of a machine and it has been sitting there for 3 years, dead in the field, no ifs, ands, or buts, and you put a voltmeter across it and you don't get diddly, okay? If you take that and you put it on a professional charger, guaranteed that professional charger decides to tell you it errored, the battery is junk, screw you, nobody wants to play, go away, it hates you, okay? On the other hand, if you take about 1 out of 5 of those batteries that have sat in a field for 3 years, it is dead, 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 no ifs, ands, or buts, stone cold dead. And you take one of those chintzy, stupid 1.5 amp maintainer chargers from Harbor Freight. If you don't know the ones I'm thinking about, go on Harbor Freight, look up battery chargers, and order the one that has the chintzy alligator clips. It's got like an accordion cord to it, and it's got a horrible little box that's, yeah, it's a box about the size of a GoPro, and it's got this cell phone charger looking plug-in on it. And the reason for those is because they are a no bleeps given charger, okay? They do not care. No matter what, it always puts out voltage. It doesn't care. It always puts out that 1.5 amps. There is no care in that thing. And if you connect one of those to one of those batteries that you found dead in a field and you forget it, deliberately put it somewhere, put a notice in your Google Calendar to go check it a week later, and about 1 in 5 of those will come back to life. And if you take it, you will come back to it. And the funny thing is, when you come back to it, it won't have 12 plus volts. It'll have about 9 to 10. And the reason being is, for some reason, those Harbor Freight chargers, they only get them to that maintained voltage and cycle them. They don't seem to go further. So if you get it to that 9 to 10 and then you put it onto a good 2 amp charger, something, a decent, actual, honest to God 2 amp charger, it'll see the initializing voltage and it'll charge it fully the rest of the way. But if after a week you come back and that thing is still a dead doornail, throw it in the recycling bin. That's all it's ever going to be good for. That is my trick to reconditioning batteries. Like I said, about 1 in 5, it ends up coming back to life. Literally hook it up, set yourself a Google Calendar, call it good, and then come back and check on it. Let's see. The coffee is actually whiskey. Sorry, what? Nope, sorry. It is coffee. Actually, I was such a bad alcoholic when I was an alcoholic that I used to actually put Jack Daniels in my morning coffee. Literally, that's how bad of an alcoholic I was 3 years ago. I literally used to wake up, drink 2 beers, and drink 2 cups of coffee and have my 3rd cup of coffee with a shot of Jack Daniels. That's how bad an alcoholic I was 3 years ago. Let's see. Will you ever build a pulling tractor? I've talked about this a couple of times, and the problem with me building a pulling tractor is that the nearest place that does pulling, that an adult. So let's clarify this. In the state of Maine, almost all of your pulling competitions are kids, not adults. Okay? John has no interest in doing pulling. Okay? None. He has no interest in doing pulling. So therefore, the nearest place for me to do a pulling competition and do it as an adult is a 2.5 hour drive away from me. It's about 2 hours to 2.5 hours. So unfortunately, that's not worth my investment to do. The drag racing thing, all of the places that they drag race when there isn't the stupid cornhole going on are all within about a half an hour drive from me. Which also, by the way, just, since you guys like to go and stir the pot, if you'd like to stir the pot on the person that everybody would like to go and see me compete against again, the drag races that I go to, they're open to the public. Anybody could be able to show up, and they're only about an hour and a half drive away from the mower god. Yeah, okay. So anyways, if you guys want to stir the pot, feel free to go bug him. Maybe we'll get him to go and build a dragster. Anyways, so yeah, as far as the pulling tractors are concerned, I have no inclination to do one because it's not worth the investment. Let's see. Hunter, going back to your original statement about the engine, if it has that much missing off of it, then the answer to your question is no. I would go with another motor, because by the time you invest that, I mean, coils alone, even the Chinese coils, I mean, you're talking $40. By the time you deal with all of that, attempt to retune your governor, wire in all your electrical, all of that kind of stuff, it's not worth it. You're going to spend more money, more time, more anything than just buying a known good motor. At that point, that thing is most definitely a parts motor. It is not worth rebuilding. Why the foil hat? The answer for the foil hat is because during my absence of a month and a half, I ended up with so many people sending me messages or sending me emails and just different conspiracy theorists on why it is that I stopped doing live chats. The real honest truth is I stopped doing live chats because I just was too busy. I was way too busy to go and do the live chats, and I just had way too much going on. And so I just ended up needing to go and just disconnect and focus on getting things done. It gets cold really quick here in Maine. And so by the time you hit the 1st of October, a day in Maine during about the second week of October, you literally start at 9 a.m. at 40 degrees or lower. By the time you hit 1 in the afternoon, it can be as much as 70 degrees. And by the time the sun sets at about 6:30 to 7, you can be all the way to 45 and dump down into frost by the time you hit 7:30. So I needed that slot of time because 5 days is a full week worth of work that I would have been doing, 3 live chats. I've missed 3 live chats, and that's 3 solid days worth of work. That's 8-hour shift worth of time that I really needed to be able to get stuff done. So that's the reason why I didn't do the live chats for a while. I'm sorry that all of you ended up sending me emails and asking if I was okay and if I needed help and everything else. So thank you very much for doing that, and I appreciate it. The other interesting thing about me not doing my live chats that I noticed, just, one of those things that I do pay attention to. I do pay attention to those who like to go and talk a little bit of smack about me and a little bit of hate. I find it rather interesting that when I stopped doing live chats, all of a sudden their Wednesday night live chat managed to lose close to 50 to 60% of its viewership. So, you know, I wonder why it is all of a sudden they changed their live chat to be on the same night as mine. You know, just a conspiracy theory. Anyways, going back down through what you guys were chatting, since YouTube apparently has a really stupid chat tonight. Let's see. Okay, the chat is jumping around all over the place. I have no idea what is apparently stupid with YouTube tonight. Give me just a sec. Let's see. Okay, Mr. Rallyman, money-wise, what changed for the downturn? I'm assuming what you're talking about is why it is I'm making $1,000 less, but yet I still have the same number of views. Actually, I am making more views. I have more views on my channel now. I'm actually only about a month away from clearing 100,000 subscribers. I should be clearing 100,000 subscribers sometime next month. So as far as what's going on, the real reality is when cornhole started, you need to go and think of the advertisement revenue of YouTube as being like a pie. Okay? And so every single YouTuber that is monetized is taking a chunk out of that pie. There is only just so big of a pie in order to be able to have YouTube revenue coming from it. And so what happened is that as everybody came onto YouTube, you ended up with more people doing YouTube. You ended up with more people that got monetized during that time. So the number of people eating out of that monetization pie increased. On top of that, advertisers had to close down their businesses. They had to shut down things. For example, Home Depot, Lowe's, Sears, all of the places that usually run lawn tractor advertisements, MTD, Cub Cadet, all of them that usually run summertime lawn tractor advertisements, they never ran them this year. Home Depot never ran its ads. Lowe's never ran its ads. Cub Cadet never ran its special ads. The zero turn companies never ran their special ads. All of them canceled their advertisements, which means that I never got advertisements on lawn tractor videos during this summer like I normally would. So with that being said, so you have a pie, you have an increased number of people eating out of that pie, and then to increase the problem, you have a smaller pie of ad revenue. And that's the reason why it is I'm making less, even though I currently have more views. Travis Knight, so you call yourself a redneck computer geek. However, what is your computer specs? My answer to the question there is that as a computer tech, and I did computer repair consistently from the age of about 15 years old all the way up through until I was 35 years old. I was computer repair consistently for over 20 years. The answer to your question is, as far as I am concerned, if you overbuild a computer and you are not a professional gamer or a professional video editor, a professional something that needs that overbuilt computer, as far as I'm concerned, you're no better than the guy that builds a mall crawler truck because you have small cojones. That is my personal opinion as a 20-year computer tech. I have a computer that is built good enough to do what it is I need to do. I don't have any interest in playing big, giant computer games. The video editing that I do is capable of 2.4 and 4K editing. And I actually do most of my video editing from my cell phone, to be totally blunt honest with you. So literally the only thing that my computer gets used for is to be able to edit YouTube descriptions easier, to be able to deal with hyperlinks for my Amazon stuff, to be able to deal with stuff like that. So my computer, in all honesty, by gamer standards, is an utterly castrated piece of junk. If you wish to talk mall crawler specs, then I'm not the guy to talk it. Because if you want neon lights and you want horsepower that you're never going to use, and you want big, shiny, stupid chrome rims and stuff like that, the computer equivalent, you won't find it in my shop. I have a computer that is built to do my needs, and that's the way it is, just like my mud mower. My mud mower is built in order to do what it's supposed to do. It's not built to show off. It's not built to go and sit there and look pretty. It is built to go and get in the mud, rip the mud up, and get out of the mud. It doesn't need to do 30 miles per hour. It only needs to be able to do 20. That's the reason why my computer is, by gamer standards, very castrated. My lathe is being made from a piece of railroad track. I love seeing other people sweat. I love the lathe builds. I really do. I have been watching so many homemade lathe builds over the past 6 months. I have debated making a homemade lathe so many different times over the last few years. I think, unfortunately, it's a little outside of what I'm comfortable with my skills. I'm an okay welder. I've been welding for many, many, many years, but it just is a little bit outside of what I care to attempt. I think eventually I will just plain buy a lathe in order to be able to do stuff. Josh says, I'm doing a diesel swap into a Bohlins 1050 and an MTD 860. I'll make sure to look those up after the chat in order to see what kind of drivetrain and stuff like that they have. I don't know either of those off the top of my head. And the thing I'll explain there is Bohlins is really rare up here in Maine. We don't usually see many Bohlins up this way. As far as MTDs go, basically all we see are the Yardmans that I tried to go and build a dragster into, and the yard machines. We don't see many classic MTDs, like that big giant MTD white that I have that we're going to be building into a machine in order to do the driveway for this winter. That is really rare up here in Maine. We don't see that kind of stuff. Usually it's all rotted out, and they really didn't sell that many up here. What's your favorite beverage? Mine is bleach. Actually, spicy ginger ale, to be totally stone cold honest with you. I really like Jamaican ginger ale, and I like really, really spicy ginger ale. Let's see. What's my opinion on the U.S. election? Sorry, guys, I don't talk politics in the chat. As far as I'm concerned, the chat's not the place for that kind of stuff. Let's see. Hey, are you working on, brother? I'm assuming you mean, what am I working on? Well, I built a dragster, and then I built another dragster, So I managed to go and take the MTD, do a 5-speed swap, as you guys know, on RCG Racing. That took me 3 days to accomplish. And then from scratch, and I mean from scratch, as in it still had the mowing deck on it, I built another dragster in 3 days that's capable of 30 miles per hour plus. And now it's Wednesday, and I'm really not sure what I'm going to go and do the next couple of days. I think, in all honesty, I'm probably going to spend the next couple of days working on some more cleanup, trying to reorganize the chat and trying to go and figure out stuff. I'm going to assume the chat just decided to go and freeze on you guys again, because I'm noticing that you guys are starting to talk about, hey, can you see this or whatever again. I apologize. I don't know what is up with YouTube tonight. This chat is being utterly stupid, and we'll see what's going on. I usually stop the chats at around 7:30. I'm going to let the chat go until 8 o'clock tonight. And the reason being is because this thing seems to be catching up on the chat about every 20 minutes or so. So I'll see if I can babble and talk about something for the next few minutes and see if everything will go from there. Let's see. Would be funny if you could beat him with the MTD with an FNR. In all honesty, the FNR is never going to clear anything more than about 20 miles per hour. I was able to actually get the big FNR to clear 24 miles per hour. But the moment I ended up clutching it just slightly incorrectly, the very drive hitches up and it snaps those transmissions one right after another. If you do not come down perfectly off that clutch, every single time it snaps that transmission. So as far as the FNR MTD actual setup is concerned, it's just not worth it. Now, as far as that double clutch, yep, all of a sudden the chat is just insanely filling right now. So we will continue pulling, doing this, and we'll go from there. But as far as the MTD is concerned, we'll see what I can do, but I don't think I'll ever be able to get an FNR actual very drive system to go faster. I might go back to it if I end up with another horde of them. Part of the reason why it is I ended up doing that is I ended up with a horde of 7 MTDs, all from the same tweaker that had them at a trailer park in the back. He needed to get rid of them, and he just wanted all of them gone. I ended up with 7 in one go. On top of that, another like 6 of them for free in different stages of disrepair. And so I had extra to burn. I had extra to blow up and extra things to pull parts from. So it didn't matter to me if I exploded them with 10 free chassis to explode. Why is all of my text being deleted? See, apparently the chat screwed up on you guys' side too. I really apologize for that. Unfortunately, I can't do anything about YouTube. IBM ThinkPad running Linux. I used to use Linux all the time when I was a computer tech. And it's amazing how many times that you could take an Ubuntu CD, you could boot up off of an Ubuntu boot CD or a USB flash drive and be able to just go in and copy and paste off all of people's stuff. You know, their Windows wouldn't boot. You could take a boot CD or a flash drive, and you could go in with Linux and you could just literally copy everything off of their computer, even if it had a Windows password on it and everything else. People don't realize just how utterly, totally worthless that Windows password is. The Windows password is about as useful as a padlock. You only put a padlock onto something to keep the honest people out. If anybody wants to get in, nowadays you can buy a grinder like my skill grinder. You can buy a skill grinder, a cordless grinder that'll cut 30 padlocks on one battery charge in like minutes. And you know, that's the way US, that's the way a Windows password is on most computers. And people just don't get that. They don't realize just how open all of their stuff is. What do I, bleh, life's adventures. What do you recommend for winter preparation for storing a lawn tractor, etc.? I clean the deck, I add rust inhibitor and additives, and I run it through, and then I empty the tank. Your thoughts? So I don't empty the tank, but I do run the tank down. So here's the reason why I run the tank down and I don't empty the tank. So when I park a machine, if it's a personal machine that I use myself, I basically do everything that you've described. If I get a chance, I clean the deck. I Rust-Oleum the bottom of the deck if it's my personal machine. I'll go through the effort of cleaning the top of the deck and doing stuff like that to put it away for winter prep if it's a personal machine I care about. Currently, right now, I have the most utterly, totally rigged together MTD in the world right now as my yard machine, because I just plain needed something to finish the season with. It's 4 MTDs thrown together to make one, and the motor is the one off the dragster that would not stay running for more than a minute and a half. I tell you what, it is rather frustrating to mow about an acre worth of lawn at about a minute and a half worth of cycling. But if you do it in between yard work, it actually isn't that bad. If you figure that doing the back lawn takes about 15 minutes to 10 minutes to do, so you do as much as you can before the machine dies, you go do something else for 5 minutes, and you come back, you start it up, you do the next minute and a half, 2 minutes worth until it dies. It's really not that big of a deal, but it's still a pain in the neck. Anyways, so why is it I leave just a little bit in the bottom of the gas tank? I personally like to go and seafoam the contents of the tank. I burn it down to the point there's only a tiny little bit in it, and then I close it up for the winter and tarp it and call it good. The reason being is in the spring, if it is a gravity-fed system, if I pop that gas cap off and I do not see anything in it, then I know that during the winter, my carb at some point had an issue. At some point, either somehow the float sank, somehow I ended up with a leaking line somewhere, somehow I ended up with an issue. The real reality is, if everything is sealed up correctly, by the time you come back to it 3 or 4 months later to fire it up, you should still have gas in that gas tank. It gives you something to pre-start from in the springtime. That's just my own personal little gimmick. I'll word it as gimmick, because whether it's right or whether it's wrong, it's something that I tend to go by. The other thing that I'll tell you is a lot of the old timers actually used to go and add, heating oil. They used to go and add a couple of tablespoons of diesel, kerosene, heating oil, something like that, to it. I have found that I don't like that, because I find that unless it's actually heating oil that has the anti-freezing compound added to it, it's not worth it, because diesel, when it gets cold, tends to gel. kerosene when it gets cold, unless it's got treatment, tends to gel. So up here in Maine, the old timer trick of adding that in order to go and store gas, I have found actually causes problems rather than saving from problems. Do I know anything about Wisconsin engines? I'm sorry, I do not. I know that Wisconsin's were discontinued. I know that I haven't personally dealt with any Wisconsins, so I would be giving you false information to even discuss them. I'm sorry, I just would rather be totally upfront about it. Let's see. I'm restoring a 1981 Snapper rear engine 30. Your videos inspired me a lot. I'm glad that I could help you. I'm glad that I could go and give you some information and inspiration along the way. I mean, the real reality is once you get the basics figured out, it's really not that difficult. And you don't have to have a bunch of expensive tools to do what I do. Yes, I have a plasma cutter. Yes, I have some other expensive tools, but the real reality is those are shortcut tools. They are not necessary to be able to do what I do. And so, you know, that's one of the things. I know this is a random question, but do you have a Craftsman LT4000? I don't currently have an LT4000. I have, however, had many LT4000s. Actually, I do believe if you look at the Bouncer build, I do believe that Bouncer has an LT4000 hood on it from one that I got for free. LT4000s are really just basically an LT1000. They just happen to have some upgraded parts on them that the LT1000 doesn't have. And so I usually don't tend to bother caring about the 4000 because a lot of people paid too much for a 4000 as far as I'm concerned. And so they tend to think it's worth way more than what it really is. Like I said, an LT4000 is just an LT1000 with a couple of minor upgrades to it. And so they're not worth what everybody seems to think that they are. I have a Kohler Courage 20 horsepower. My starter can't spin my flywheel under compression, also drains the battery and smokes. But when I take the spark plug out, spins fine. Should I adjust the starter? Or the ACR? So you've got a couple of things going on there. So if you have a Kohler Courage, the question is, do you have one of the Kohlers where you have adjustable valves, or do you have one of the Kohlers that you have hydraulic valves? I don't happen to remember off the top of my head whether one of those 20 horsepower ones is or is not adjustable. I do believe the 20 horsepower is one with adjustable valves. I'm sure somebody will end up chiming in if the text actually decides to catch up in this stupid chat. Thank you, YouTube, for utterly deciding to mess with my entire chat tonight. That's the thing that I always tell everybody is find out whether you have adjustable valves, if the turnover doesn't work right. If you have smoke coming out of that starter, then you obviously have something wrong, and you probably have already done damage to that starter. My 2 cents as far as that starter is concerned, I would probably throw it onto a bench, and I would probably pop the cap just barely enough. Usually most starters usually have 2 nuts that are going, 2 bolts that are going through them, and they usually have bolts on them that have a nut that will unthread usually about a 1/4 inch or so. And you'll be able to take one side, preferably, yes, the side towards the starter gear. You should be able to pull just a little bit in order to be able to open it and be able to spray PB Blaster on the inside. Now the key is you want to do the side that is you want to do the side that has the gear. And the reason why you want that side is because your brushes, which are spring loaded, are on the bottom of most starters. So if you hold that tight, you pop that open, you can PB Blaster on the inside of it, that little bit that it opens, put it back together, spin it over on the bench. That'll cycle everything, clean it up. But most likely you need to check those valves. So go through, find out whether yours is that tight. The other thing is, if it is a Kohler that has hydraulically adjusted valves, then you can end up with the exact same problem that Mazda 626s and 89 Ford, 89, 91, and 92 Ford Probes had, and 90, where the hydraulic lifter, if you didn't do your oil changes on a regular basis, would actually get filled with carbon. And you can take those hydraulic lifters and you can tear them down and you can clean them and be able to put them back together. But is it worth it to do? That's the next question. Oh, here we go. We just got the chat flooding again. All right, guys. So I will try to catch up on the chat a little bit and we'll go down through here. Surely you need a right angle gearbox to adapt a horizontal into a mower and some nuts and bolts and a welder and a bit of spare time. Then you have your smoker. Actually, you do not. If you want to do a Google search, look up a GT 6000 with a 18 horsepower Briggs & Stratton. Feel free to look that up. You're going to see it's the gray model with a Roper 633. That is a horizontal pulleyed transmission with a horizontal engine setup. And it literally goes through a belt bend. If you want to go onto the Redneck Computer Geek channel and look up GT6000, you'll actually see me do a belt swap on one of those, and you can check out the really wonky setup that has. So the question is, can I take the same exact concept and can I make my own custom 90-degree belt drive with clutch? All of it would have to be custom to be able to have a horizontal shaft motor in a vertical shaft pulley transmission chassis. That's a hard mouthful to state, but that's what I'm thinking about trying to go and do this winter. Now, do you guys think that would be a good thing? I have the chassis to try it with already. But is it worth it? Do you guys actually think that would be something you guys would want to see? Lauren seems to think he's going to start casting out his own top ends for his F&Rs. You know what, Lauren? You managed to go and figure that out, and that would be absolutely amazing. In all honesty, for years I have stated that if somebody could manage to come up with a way to cast a shell for an MST series transmission, so that you just drop your gears in and have a reinforced shell, I bet that would sell like hotcakes. I bet that would utterly sell like hotcakes. Even better, as far as the racers are concerned, if you could come up with a way to go and make your own Peerless 700 series, that would be even better. But you know, power to you, man. I hope you managed to go and get it figured out, and I hope you managed to get it to work. That would be awesome. Let's see. I am clueless about the technical side of computers. I bought myself a how-to code for dummies book. How else can I get started? So the answer that I usually end up telling most people is the way that I recommend is, if you're really into the idea of building your own computer, is to get a really cheap but still functional computer that you can physically pop the side panel off of, take tons of pictures for a reference. Okay? Take tons of pictures for a reference so you know exactly how it went together. And then go through and carefully take it apart, take it all the way down to the motherboard, taking pictures as you go, researching how stuff comes out as you go, put it back together, get it to the point that you can do that a couple of dozen times and be able to do it correctly. Then the next step up from that is go on a site like Newegg, or I believe tigerdirect.com still exists, but Newegg, last I knew, they have builds which are already pre-tested to work, collaboration the parts, where they picked out parts that are already guaranteed to work, that are shipped to you, and you need to assemble, and then you need to install Windows in order for it to work. And that allows you to be able to know that the parts are going to work, and to be able to work through putting it together with the previous knowledge. And then that way you have a minimum investment before you make a big investment. That is my recommendation for you as far as doing something along those lines. That's how I learned. I literally bought computers at the age of 15. I bought computers one right after another from the local, it wasn't Goodwill back then. It was some church-run group in my hometown, and I can't think of what they were called. But I would go in, and I would find computers in the church version of Goodwill, and I would make sure that they booted up. I would make sure that they basically got to Windows, and then I would take them home, and I would make notes. I would write notes, because back then you didn't have digital cameras. Back then, that was still back when you had film cameras, and film was expensive. So I would write my own notes. I would draw diagrams, and I would literally rip them all the way down to chassis. I would put them all the way together, and that was how I learned. I consistently did that one right after another, which is what I've oftentimes actually recommended to people as far as a lawn tractor is concerned. Buy a lawn tractor that is $100, just barely runs, but it runs and it works beater. Take pictures, tear it apart, do the belts, do the tensioner pulley, do the upgraded blade engagement. You know, take all of it apart, take as many pictures as you need to, and learn. That is the best way you can do it. And it will constantly teach you way more than any video or book is ever going to. Do I recommend a pull-in over a John Deere? Personally, any day. But the other thing is, I live in an area where John Deeres are rare, which means any part that I have to deal with for a John Deere costs me 3 times as much as it does for a pull-in. I literally can go on Marketplace and I can buy a halfway decent pull-in all summer long for $100 to $200. I can fix it up and I can flip it for $400 to $500. A John Deere, on the other hand, parts cost 3 times as much in my area. The nearest John Deere dealership to me is an hour plus drive away, which means for me to get parts, I have to order them online. John Deere does not like to go and sell parts on Amazon. They love to go and make sure that they keep things as much as possible off of Amazon. So they're very limited. That's my personal take on it. Everybody has their own take on that. That's just my personal thing. Is the 12 gauge deck on a Craftsman LT1000 better than the normal decks? Yes, the 12 gauge decks are usually better, if I remember right. I believe that there is a deck that is one above that, and I believe that there's another deck that is below that, if I remember right. So basically, when you're dealing with your Craftsmans, you've got your base deck, and your base deck only has the impact guides. And what I mean by the impact guides is that I'm trying to find something. Okay. So if we're using my cell phone as a representation of our mowing deck, okay? So on Craftsman's, if it has no wheels, and it has the underside impact guides where it's got the reinforcements where if it catches something it skids, it's a base deck, okay? If it has the couple of wheels on the back, it's the next gauge up. If it has all 4 wheels, then it's the next model up from that. And there also is an industrial model, which is the next one up for that. So I guess there's actually 4. Sorry. There's 4 different decks if you really pay attention. On top of that, if you're dealing with the Pull-in Pros, there is a Pull-in Pro that is basically a knockoff of the LT1000. And it has a 38-inch and it has a 42-inch deck. And you have to be careful with those because the 38-inch deck uses a different belt size, but it uses the same exact spindles as a 42. So your spindles are interchangeable, but your belt is a different size. So you got to be careful and you got to watch out. The mounting fronts on a 38, the 2 levers on the front are also different on a 38 than they are on a 42. Now you can cut and weld a 38 to be straight to fit a 42, and you can bend and weld a 42 to fit a 38. There we go. So you can go back and forth, but you have to make adaptations and you have to weld stuff. 100% gasoline will save you a lot of trouble when you're putting away a machine for winter. Yes, 100% gasoline will save you a ton of trouble when you're putting it away for winter. Except for the problem is we have Obama gas all through the state of Maine now, and our Obama gas can be upwards of 15% in certain sections of the state of Maine. The nearest gas station that I can go to in order to be able to get actual, honest to God, 100% gasoline, it is $1.20 more a gallon for me to get actual gasoline. So that's another problem that you run into up here in the northern states is the 15% ethanol in our gas due to Obama regulations. Now, the other thing I'm going to go and point out as far as the John Deere discussion, just to go back to that, because I know that a lot of you are going to all of a sudden explode on me about not liking John Deere. There also is a difference. There is a giant difference, and Cub Cadet is the same way. There is a giant difference between an actual John Deere versus a John Deere Sabre, okay? A John Deere Sabre is not actually a John Deere. A John Deere Sabre is a rebranded. It is not an actual John Deere. Just the same exact thing as if you are dealing with a Cub Cadet that has an MTD FNR, or it has a Peerless hydrostatic 316. If you are dealing with a Cub Cadet and you look underneath the rear and it has a Peerless hydrostatic 316 dash, insert four numbers here, that is actually an MTD chassis. It is not actually a Cub Cadet. It is actually an MTD. And that is the thing you got to watch out for with Cub Cadets and with John Deeres. They're selling it based on the name. And the same thing is true with a lot of your cars nowadays. That is the reason why it is Ford. Ford, for example, with the Ford Ranger, if you are buying a Ford Ranger from about 1988 all the way until the last ones were produced before the recent 2020 model, you're not buying a Ford. You are buying a Mazda. And a lot of people don't realize that. The engines in Ford Rangers are not, they're not Ford motors. They are Mazda. And so keep that in mind. When you're buying a lawn tractor, do your research to find out whether it is an actual made by the manufacturer or whether it is a rebrand, because there's a giant difference in quality. Camillo, which I'm sure I just butchered your name and I'm sorry. On the opposed twin that only runs for a minute or two, it sounds like to me you need to replace the coil. When it gets hot, I think it's losing spark. Try replacing the coil. I would love to agree with you. But I'd also have to believe that supposedly 3 different coils were bad in order to agree with you. I have tried swapping in another known good coil. I have tried swapping in a Chinese chink coil, and I tried swapping in an actual Oregon coil that cost me $40+. That motor always runs consistently for about a minute and a half, 2 minutes at the very most, and then dies. You are exactly right on the money to what I originally thought, which is part of the reason why it is I bought the machine for $50, the one that the motor came off of, because I thought I was going to be a smart, I know everything lawn tractor guy, and I thought I was going to swap in a Chinese $20 coil, and I thought I was going to flip that motor for $150 on Marketplace, and I was going to make $100. That didn't happen. I don't know what it is about that motor. All I know is that, and it'll have spark when it dies. I checked that numerous times. It consistently, about a minute and a half to about 2 minutes, it'll drop dead, and then it'll proceed to go and go from there. About 5 minutes, 10 at the very most, it'll end up deciding that it wants to run again, and then it'll shut down. To be quite honest, it has compression issues just barely in one side. I think it's got a head gasket going, and I think when it heats up to a certain point, the head gasket acts like it's blown, and it's just enough to cause it to have issues. The real reality is it's an opposed twin. They love to do really stupid things. I probably will never bother trying to fix it. I'm just going to run it till it blows the rest of the way and call it good. Whoop, the chat just exploded again. All right, I will try to catch up on 1 or 2 things from some of you guys. Go from there. Let's see. All right. All right, guys. So I see that a bunch of you have ended up sending a chat, have ended up saying something in this chat. I apologize that I have not been able to get to all of you. Please feel free to send me an email about whatever your question was. I will try to catch up with you. I am literally starting to lose my voice. I've been at it for an hour and a half now. I apologize, but I'm going to have to call it quits for tonight. We'll try to do another chat in 2 weeks like we usually do. And by then, I should have the drag racing footage posted, providing we end up having a drag race. Please, please, please cross your fingers, cross your toes, cross your tongue up, or cross your nose. I don't care what you got to cross, but hope it does not rain on the 3rd. There is a 25% chance of rain on that day. We will not be racing it if it is raining at 1 o'clock in the afternoon on that day. So please, please cross your fingers, cross your toes, cross your tongue across your nose, and hope that we get to race. The last one of the season. So thank you for your support. Feel free to go and send me an email. Feel free to go on to the Facebook page and send me a message through the Facebook page. And I hope you all are doing well. And we'll see you guys all in 2 weeks. Have fun, guys, and enjoy.